On today's podcast, we have Matt Watkinson. Matt is the author of 3 fantastic books, Mastering Uncertainty, The 10 Principles Behind Great Customer Experiences, and The Grid. He's a CEO at the digital agency Methodical and a venture partner at VC fund Tiller Partners, both based in LA. Matt has dedicated his career so far to helping organizations create great products and services that make people's lives easier and more enjoyable. In this episode, we're going to discuss coming through tough times, how you can master uncertainty, and how you can increase your odds of success through the power of determination and thinking big. I hope you enjoy. Matt Watkinson, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, James. It's a real pleasure. I think I've listened to every episode, so I'm genuinely delighted to be appearing.
Oh, fantastic. That's great to hear, Matt. Look, can we start with you giving those listening some context in terms of where it all began for you?
Yeah, well, I think given the topic, talking about the idea of accelerating excellence and having obviously read your book more than once, I should say, as well. I feel like it's kind of probably like a lot of people, like my own ethos or my own goal is to achieve a high standard in the things that I do. You know, I think it comes from my parents, comes from my family. I think it comes from the environment in which I was raised. That, you know, you do your best. You try to achieve your potential, and if you fulfill your potential, you try to keep on stretching it. You know, and I think that's just something that and I think a lot of people, obviously yourself included, and many of the other people you've had on the podcast it's a life philosophy as much as anything. I think probably the first time I really bit off more than I could chew in that regard was probably when I was 16, which is when I was really seriously into working towards a career as a musician and playing the piano. And I started working on a fiendishly difficult piece of music, Tchaikovsky's First Piano Concerto.
Wow.
And it dominated me, basically. And it took 4 or 5 hours of very deliberate, systematic practice a day, in like through 16 probably to 18, to complete learning it and be able to perform it. I'm not saying I performed it to a level where, you know, it would have impressed like a world-class professional, but
Sure.
Even getting it done at 18 is an almost unheard of thing, I think. So, but the reason I start with that is that I think I just learned so much from that experience that you can then pretty much apply to anything else, right? Like you can apply the work ethic, the patience, the breaking it down into small things, the need, like I obviously had a phenomenal teacher and everything as well, like the need for coaching, all those things. So if we fast forward a little bit to
Can I just ask you a quick one there, Matt?
Yeah,
was that
sure.
a voluntary goal you set? Was that something imposed on you by your coach or teacher at the time, or did that come from you?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually, James, because it did come from me. I heard the piece and I was just totally inspired by it. And in fact, there was tremendous resistance. They were just saying, like, they just literally laughed when I said I was going to do it. They're like, there's no way. You don't have the right background. It can't be done, was the response. But that just, you know, again, like for a lot of perverts, it just fuels the fire a little bit more when you're told that you can't do it, and you've really got a kind of bit of a chip on your shoulder. I personally consider that to be an asset sometimes, you know,
Nice.
like having a point to prove. So yeah, if we I did, however, realize that I wasn't, to use your language, as concordant with the task as I would have needed to be to make it as a professional. So I did a pretty hard pivot. I was a bit lost in my early 20s, but I taught myself 2 things. One was photography, and one was interaction design for websites and software. Now, the photography was interesting because I I really was kind of concordant with that. And I think combined with the kind of work ethic that I learned from the music, by the time I was 22, having only picked up a camera at 20, I was already shooting international features for Top Gear, and all of the kind of world's top car magazines. And I didn't even have have camera gear. I had to borrow it from pros and people in my network, which was wild. So that was really my first taste of the payoff of having you know, the kind of mindset and the attitude and the approach to what we were talking about. I would just literally go out and practice. I would like different lighting conditions, different lenses, different angles, I would just practice, with the aim being like, and I say this all the time, I don't know whether it came from you or from somebody else, but I don't want to practice till I get it right. I want to practice until I cannot get it wrong. Like that was my attitude to it, and it kind of became systematic. I don't work as a professional photographer anymore, but I still love it, and I still make 2 photo books every year. I always have a camera with me, so I still love it. But then it was really my design career that took off, in that I happened to just be in the right place at the right time in the right industry, with it exploding, first e-commerce, then the iPhone, then the iPad, then everything else that's come along. And I was just fortunate to have my name attached to some very successful projects. Now, when we're talking about design work, you're always part of a massive team, so you can't take too much credit for it. But yeah, I had some really big projects and some big brands early on in my career, to the point that I was kind of bumping into a glass ceiling even by my mid-20s. That's when I wrote my first book, The 10 Principles Behind Great Customer Experiences. So I was 28, I think, when I sat down to write it. I couldn't get a publishing deal for love nor money. Like 12, I think I had 12 rejections from major publishers. I eventually got like what you could call like a pity fuck publishing deal from the Financial Times, who did publish it, and with very low expectation, and with everyone saying like, why do we want to hear about this? And then it won Management Book of the Year the year it came out. I think I must be the youngest recipient of that award. I think I was 30 when it was eventually published, because, as you probably know, publishing cycles are pretty long. Yeah, and then I haven't really deviated from the trajectory. 2 more books, The Grid by Penguin Random House, that came out in 17, and now the last one, which I know you've read, with that I co-wrote with my friend Chava, Mastering Uncertainty. Both published by Penguin Random House, both being translated internationally, and yeah, both again writing being fairly similar to, in its own way, to the things that your other guests and people in your network talk about all the time, and that it's a craft, right? You have to, and even though I think this is like a common misconception about creative work, or maybe people just haven't thought about it. It's exactly the same in terms of a discipline, to design something, to write something, to perform a piece of music, as it is to be an athlete or to be an elite performer in anything. It requires exactly the same mindset. It requires exactly the same approach to the work. It requires diligence, attention to detail, practice, and really a philosophy of it being a craft that you're attempting to master. You know, that's really, and I think that's why I loved the book so much, and I love hearing from your other guests so much, because it doesn't matter whether they're talking about boxing, which is a sport personally, like I know nothing about boxing. I've never been to a boxing match, but hearing the way that these people talk about their approach to their work, hearing the way that people are, like the level of commitment, the meticulousness, and the absolute like consistency and attention to detail, all of that, it really is reassuring, because some of us are like trying to figure it out by ourselves. But when you start to hear about other people and their work ethic and their approach, and it starts to resonate with you, you begin to be able to connect the dots, I think. And so that's been a really gratifying experience.
That's incredible to hear, Matt. And like, you know, I've had the privilege to work cross domain, and ultimately we're all working with the same equipment, fundamentally the human brain and, you know, body as well. One of the things you touched on there was this, what sounded to me like a bit of a tipping point where you're cranking sort of away, and then sort of all of a sudden, you know, you hit this tipping point where you're suddenly this award-winning author, and at a very young age. I mean, how did that feel to you? Did that change your approach? Because when you sort of step back and look at your journey externally, you suddenly sort of arrived and young, you're on the scene in that respect within your domain. But did that change much to you in terms of how you went about performing day to day?
So it had positives and it had negatives. The positives were it opened up another avenue where I've been fortunate to have a degree of success, which is in keynote speaking and speaking at events and conferences. I'd never done that before. And at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I was able to apply exactly the same mindset and mentality to that as I was to everything else. So even today, you know, if I have to give a speech or a presentation, I will have rehearsed it up to the point where it's timed to within 20 seconds or 30 seconds, absolute consistent delivery. I can run it with the slides, I can run it without the slides. I really like to do things to the point where they become a procedure. And some people would say, well, if you're speaking, you don't want to do that because it sounds wooden. But actually the opposite is true. When you have total command of the material, that's when you're able to ad lib. That's when you're really able to relax. That's when you're really able to start to bring a little bit of improvisation into the mix as well, because you feel so solidly grounded in what you've got to do and the job that you've got to do as well. So yeah, a lot of speaking opportunities came out of that, and that's been very gratifying. Traveled to a lot of interesting places, met a lot of interesting and amazing people as a byproduct of that. The downside was that I didn't really have a plan for having a successful book. I thought I would just be able to continue my career as a designer, but charge a little more or have a little more authority in the meeting room. But instead, I kind of got promoted to my level of incompetence, in that people wanted me to opine and strategize and drink coffee with the boss, which A, wasn't something I had any experience doing, and B, wasn't a hat that fitted that well. I guess it must be the same in the military, I suppose, where some people they want to be in the field and then they get promoted to being behind a desk and they don't like the job anymore. You know, I've always been a doer. I like to design things, make things, get things done, create things, and the idea of just kind of talking about it didn't sit too well with me. And I think I've got to a happy place now where, you know, I have kind of have the best of both worlds. I've got my personal creative outlets, I've got the professional ones as well, and I have a thriving consulting practice as well, which is very fulfilling too. So it just took me a while to figure out what that next step would be.
Brilliant. And in terms of, if we were to talk about the conditions under which you are most motivated, driven, inspired, you know, when you look back, you look at those periods where you've been at peaks there. Are there anything that jumps out as particularly unique for that enable Matt Watkinson to access everything he's got in the locker?
That's a really good question, James. I feel like it's a combination of it's almost a game of two halves. So the first thing is that it needs to be something where I feel like it deserves to exist. So if we just talk about books, for example, as a very simple thing, I think a lot of people write books because they want to be an author, right? Like they want They want to have their name on the spine. They want the kind of kudos or whatever it is that comes along with that, or it's just being a life ambition to be an author. And I get that, and that's as true for me as it is for anyone else. But before I would write anything, I have to feel like the idea for the book deserves to exist. It has to genuinely excite me. I have to feel like it has a genuine place in the market in terms of having something to say that hasn't been said or can be said in a different way. So I have to have this genuine love for the project or the idea or the concept or the vision. I have to fall in love with it. And I think, again, when I look at the behaviors of top performers, I think one of the things that they often do is that they talk about how much they love it. You know, even though it's hard, and even though it's like any love, it can kind of be tempestuous. I think you have to love it. So I can't perform on a project that I don't love. And I know this because I've had over the years people like dangle pretty big carrots to try and get me to perform or engage on a project. Like, they offer pretty big checks, but if I don't see the value in the work, or I've taken the money before and it just didn't work, basically. So that's one of the things I learned about myself, is that you really have to love what you're doing. Otherwise you just can't persevere. When the adversity comes, which it always does, you just fold like a napkin. You know, it's no good. So that's the first thing. And then the other half of it is an environment which is conducive to producing your best work. So for me, I'm not unusual at all in that I'm very routinized in my way of doing things. When I'm writing, it's got to be the morning, or it's not going to happen, like usually as soon as I wake up. And then I kind of just gradually feel my way into productivity. And then when I'm in the zone, I just go. But the other thing that I've learned about that, which I think is a lesson that a lot of people could do with learning, is that whenever you're embarking on a large scale project, whether it's a book, whether it's, I mean, we haven't talked about building motorbikes yet, but that's my other thing. I know you know about that. Like, I love like building motorcycles, whether it's writing a book or building a motorcycle or a large scale design project or anything like that. The most important thing, I think, to try and get right is your work cadence. It's identifying a sustainable work rate where you feel like you could clock in and clock out 365 days a year, and it's sustainable for you. What you see a lot of people doing with writing, for example, is that they get very inspired and then they binge write, and they want to get straight into the writing. They don't think about the structuring and all the background work and the preamble, and they just gas themselves out. It's like trying to sprint a marathon. They gas out and then they give up. I know, because I've been around the track so many times, I can do 1,000 good words a day, every single day for the rest of my life if I needed to. Or if it hasn't happened by noon, it's not going to happen, so stop. And even if I'm having a great day, I don't break the rules. I don't go on and do 2,000 or 3,000, because the next day you kind of get an intellectual hangover of sorts where the words won't come, your brain's in a fog. So I think that one of the key lessons for succeeding with large scale projects or creative projects, and I'd be really interested to hear whether it's the same in your experience for other domains, is like get a sustainable work rate and then allow consistency and compounding to work for you. Like that's how I think about it.
I think you've put that so well, Matt. I mean, and almost linking the two key things you've talked about there. One, I would sum it up as there's lots of people that want to be an author or be a special forces operator or be a world champion, but there's not a lot of people that are in love with doing authoring, doing soldiering at the highest level, doing, you know, or, you know, the fully conscious of what that entails. in terms of that true love for the craft, not just the idea of the movie version of that craft. And then and I think one of the symptoms you see for people who are pursuing goals that they're perhaps not truly deep down concordant with is that they will try and beast themselves through it because they just want to get it done and get to the top of the mountain and get, and show off that spine of the book as you talked about, or hold that trophy in the air, rather than are just in love with, doing that day. I talk about this concept of winning your day. And I think you've given a brilliant example there of exactly what that's all about.
Yeah, I think I'm really reassured to hear that from you as well, because I've always tried to focus on having the process be the best that it can, and try and let the outcome take care of itself, because often we can't control the outcome anyway, but we can control our process. And the other thing is, this may be slightly different in my fields to some of the others, experts that you talk to, but when you're a writer, the only bit that you get to keep for yourself is the process. As soon as it's written, as soon as it's bound, as soon as it's published, it's out the door. What people are going to say about it, you can't control any of that. You can't control whether people love it, hate it, a little bit of both. As a writer or as a creative person, taking a photo, writing a book, those kinds of things, the only bit that you get to keep for yourself is the process, right? So you may as well enjoy it. You may as well try and revel in it. You may as well say, like, this bit's for me and the rest is for everyone else, but this I get to do for myself. You can be fully selfish in the process. You can't be fully selfish with the outcome. So I really think like that. And the other thing that I constantly try and remind myself, and I can't remember who came up with this expression, but I think about this all the time, especially when I'm struggling with things, is that progress is like moving a pile of sand. And some days you get a digger and some days you get a teaspoon.
Yeah.
The main thing is to just keep moving the pile. That's how I think about it. And I think the most exciting thing for me really is that, if we talk about, obviously you've got to be highly concordant with the task if you are going to achieve excellence. But I do think that if you can get the process right, if you can get the mindset right, if you can get the attitude right, I'm never gonna beat you in the high rocks, right? But I can take the same approach and work ethic into the gym with me. I can be consistent in my diet. I'm trying to get a lot quicker on the track on the bike at the moment. I'm applying exactly the same outlook, ethos, attitude to anything, and it's just so fulfilling and rewarding to live in that paradigm, I think. And I'm sure probably most of the other people that you talk to are sure they have hobbies and stuff that's just for fun, but it's a way of life as much as anything else, I think.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most exhilarating experiences there is when you can get that to click, and pursuing something that's so sincerely meaningful to you. Just like the bike on the track becomes an extension of, your body, it's kind of the same with the craft, right?
Oh, it's exactly the same. Like, I can give you a very good example of this, right? So I want to get a lot quicker on the track, but I can't go to the track every day. So how am I doing it? Like, I'm using some of the lessons from your book. I've got a coach, and we go to an empty lot and we set up circles and figure of eights. A circle and a figure of eight is a track day without the straights, basically. So you just do like the equivalent of doing 200 laps of a track in
Beautiful.
2 hours, but with someone watching you saying, oh, your inside elbow's a little bit high, or you need a stronger lock on with your
Oh, I
outside
love
leg.
that.
You need to start applying a bit more lean. Just go round and round and round and round and round.
Yeah, yeah.
200 lefts, 200 rights. Before you know it, your knees on the road, and you're starting to learn the limits of the bike. You're starting to push past your own comfort zones, but you're doing it in a very structured, kind of scalable way, and you're making it's
It's
like the most
sustainable,
nutrient
right?
dense approach to doing, right? So even with anything, you can find. I guess one of the points I wanted to make is I love the fact that I'm on your podcast and I'm not I'm not a special forces operator. I'm not a world champion athlete. I'm not any of these things. I'm not. But you can take the exact lessons from these people and from your book and from everything else, and you can lift and shift and apply them to your domain. You can say, what does structured practice look like to a writer? What does consistency look like to a photographer? Like you can take exactly the same thing, and regardless of what you're trying to accomplish, you can apply those exact lessons. And I think that that's what's so awesome and compelling about it.
Matt, that's
Really.
amazing. It's such a great example, by the way, that what you've done there with the your training for your training for the track. There's so many principles you've sort of brought into alignment in terms of, I guess the first thing that jumps out to me is just having the mindset and offensive spirit to be like, right, my skills are breaking down in a specific area. I want to get better at this. I have these constraints, and just acting within them. Like, okay, yeah, the reality is I can't get to the track every day, but not, you've beat 80% of people there, because most people just wrap there with that excuse, well, I can't get to the track every day, so I can't do X or Y.
I'm planning on beating 80% of people full stop, dude.
Yeah, yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, of
You're right.
course. And I guess that other part for me, it's really important as well, is like that identifying the high utility areas in terms of how do I maximize my performance? Like what wins me points in a race or on that track? And it's like, well, the corners are so significant, right? That's where majority of people will leak progress. Okay, well, how do we maximize and create a simplified simulation of that thing in a way that's sustainable? How do I maximize the quality of feedback? It's a real powerful example you've just given there. So thanks so much for sharing that. It's a real good example of the mentality that people like yourselves and the guests that we have on this podcast bring to their craft, but then also the application from a strategic aspect, in terms of designing training.
Yeah, I mean, and I learned I, a lot of it I had systematized from your book anyway. I mean, so one thing that I'm a strong believer in is coachability. I wrote about this in Mastering Uncertainty, that
Mm-hmm.
there is an easy way. The easy way is find an expert, ask them what to do and do it. Right, but no one wants to do that. They either find an idiot, ask them what to do and do it, or they
Yeah,
find an expert, tell them what to do and then do it, or they find an expert, ask them what to do and then do the opposite.
yeah,
Like I think I've never had a problem in getting help when it comes to things that I'm trying to achieve. I just think there's no higher return on investment than finding somebody who really knows what they're talking about, who has seen it, who has helped people accomplish what you're trying to accomplish, and then saying, "Teach me, like
yeah,
get me there." Like and one of the funny things is, I think it's probably the same with a lot of physical disciplines. On a bike, in particular, what you think your body's doing and what it's actually doing, when you see it on the video, they look completely different. Like you feel like the thing's about to topple over. You've got so much lean on the bike, and it's not even past 45 degrees. Like the way it
yeah,
feels and the way it is are different. So you need somebody to point it out to you and say, this isn't. If you want to be efficient, like I'm way too lazy to do everything the hard way. So if I can do 2 hours of drill training a week for a month and get where I would otherwise get in 3 years of track days, of course I'm going to do it. I'm surprised that more people don't just think like that. It's much more cost effective.
I guess it's good for us though, in a way. And those
It
listening
is.
to this podcast, that's our edge, right? We shouldn't tell too many people about all this.
Yeah.
But
Maybe we should publish it.
yeah,
Bit late.
exactly. Save this one for us. Can I ask you to perhaps identify, because you've got broad experience across the creative domain, but is there a single peak experience you've had, whether that was a day, a month, or a period of time, where you were just putting out on full power and delivering your best work?
I've got two answers to that. I think maybe it's tinged with nostalgia. But I feel like I had a golden period of about 12 months
I like that term.
in my late 20s, where I was writing my first book, and I lived in this lovely little place in the English countryside before I moved to America. And I would get up. It was like my days were like clockwork. I would put on breakfast and a cup of coffee. 7:30, I would sit down at my desk with my laptop and I would write until noon. Noon, I'd have an early lunch. Then I'd go out and walk for 2 or 3 hours, just processing what I'd written, lost in thought, thinking about what I needed to do for the next day. Get home, do some guitar and music practice for a couple of hours, read my notes ready for the next day, have an early dinner, and I just did that basically every day. I was in heaven, mate. It was perfect. It was just perfect. There was something about having this totally undisturbed routine. There was something about knowing exactly what I was working towards. There was something about there being no expectation, because I'd never done it before and didn't know what to expect, and everyone thought it was going to be garbage anyway. There was just something about that whole setup that was amazing. So that's like answer A. I think answer B is probably right now. I feel like at the moment, particularly taking things like general wellness and sleep and getting into a much more balanced fitness routine and being in a very kind of steady, stable environment, but with the benefit of much more experience. It's just easier, right? Like, I think that's the thing. One of the things that I find very interesting is that if I talk to a first-time writer, for example, often they will email me or call me asking for advice or help or something, and they'll be like, "Oh, this chapter's gone wrong," or "I can't, the words aren't coming," whatever, and they act like the sky's falling in. I'm like, "No, that's normal. Do you think I don't have that problem? I rewrote a chapter 12 times in my last book. Like, that's normal. That's part of the process." I think one of the things that comes with experience is recognizing that adversity and setbacks and difficulty, it just comes along for the ride. It's there, and you get better at dealing with it because you're expecting it. You're less blown off course when everything goes to shit when you're a bit older, because you've seen it so many times. Like, you're prepared. You're in the back of your mind, I guess, you're prepared for anything that could come along, so it doesn't derail you. And because it's not derailing you, it's not sucking so much of your psychic energy out of your ability to perform. You're just like, well,
Way less personal.
Yeah, it becomes a lot less personal. I think that's a good way of describing it. You just kind of roll with it, and tomorrow's another day. So I think there's some things, however kind of good your mindset is, or however all of that kind of stuff, some of it just comes with experience, that you become better able to cope with whatever it is, I guess, the pressures, or
I think it's that you're fully conscious of the reality of what it takes to write a book, right? Rather than when you haven't done it, you're perhaps you got one-sided view, right? And that's normally the movie version, what you've seen,
like
what
Love Actually.
created in your head. Yeah, the Love Actually version of writing a book.
It looks all right, to be fair. If it was like that, I would complain too much.
Because one of the things, this is a quote from you that I love, and it links to this point. There are no uncertain or difficult times. It's all the time. And we should acknowledge and accept that. And I fucking love that.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, it's the whole work I did with Chaba around uncertainty and unpredictability and how we make decisions when we can't possibly know what the outcome is going to be was totally that's another reason I would say that now I'm really excited about the future, because that unlocked something attitudinally for me. I feel like if we look in my 20s and 30s, I was just kind of hoovering up as much knowledge as I could. I think even by now I've probably read between 500 and 600 books on my field, and it's because my worldview was at that point in my trajectory, my worldview was, this is an intellectual contest. The more you know, the better you're going to perform. But then I came to realize that that's actually not really true. Like, the world rewards taking action. The world rewards embracing uncertainty. The world rewards risk taking. The world rewards a willingness to give things a go. And there are so many brilliant people who never accomplish a fraction of what they could because they don't take action. They continually think and analyze and strategize and plan. And there's always a reason to defer. Like, if you're looking for a reason to defer anything, there's never a good, you can find one. You can pluck one out of thin air, right? Like, for anything, for leaving a marriage, for not starting a project, for not, for anything that you really want to do, there's always an easy reason to defer it. But I think realizing that life rewards pragmatism and action, and you just have to start, and when you leap, the net appears, that really unlocks something big for me, because I'm trying more things, I'm experimenting with more things, I'm less concerned at the prospect of failure, which I know is a huge thing for a lot of people. I've just been able to completely reframe that as learning experiences, but never betting more than I can afford. And that's really unlocked a whole other level of outcome for me. And I'm very grateful to Chaba for his wisdom in that area.
Yeah, and it's an incredible book you've written, Matt, and it's one I think the content of which should really be taught in schools. This whole concept of probabilistic thinking. It's just incredible that it's not it's not common action, even in I guess organizations and companies you would assume have some of the most intelligent people on the planet, yet they seem to struggle so much with this. And I wondered if you could talk us through some of the reasons you think that might be.
Yeah, without being too airy-fairy and philosophical about it, I think every age kind of has a paradigm, right? So if you go back to the Victorian period, obviously everything's steam-powered machinery and factories and that kind of thing. And if you think about schooling, like, education is like a knowledge factory. Even now, it's like a kind of Victorian knowledge factory where we're
Hasn't changed
grouped
much.
by age, we're batch processed, so on and so forth. If you look at like the paradigm for when business and the discipline of management really emerged, the paradigm was the kind of the golden age of science, and also like very driven by engineering and advances in technology. So we have this kind of science lens on business. It has to be a science. So anything in business that looks like a science gets a free pass. Anything that doesn't is disregarded, right? But people don't realize that there's no exact science of business. They're just there, and there can't be one, because if there was one, as soon as everybody applied it, it wouldn't offer an advantage. Everything in business is a relative advantage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much uncertainty in the environment. We don't get to say what our competitors do, what the regulators do, whether the customers love it, whether they're ambivalent. there's so many variables, macroeconomics, new technologies coming along. We cannot possibly control our environment, right? So instead of trying to set a very fixed upside goal and then try and achieve it, the way to do it is to turn that upside down and say, how can I control my downside? And then that exposes me to unlimited upside. So let's use a very simple example, right? Think about going to a party. You go to a party, you can't know whether you're going to meet someone awesome, make a new best friend, win a client, have a great time, whatever. You can know that if you don't go, none of those things are going to happen, right? So what's the cost of going? It's a 20 quid taxi either way and 30 quid for drinks or whatever, right? So you think, okay, is it worth 70 quid? I'm in. And you can kind of apply this control my downside and expose myself to unlimited upside attitude to a lot of things. You can just say, what's my downside? What's my downside to being on this podcast? What's my downside to going to this meeting? What's my downside to asking this person to help me? The worst thing that they can do is say no, right? But we're so conditioned into upside thinking that unless we can see a clear strategic path from where we are to where we want to
Need that
be,
straight line from A to Z, don't we?
unless we can see the straight line, and unless we feel like the outcome is guaranteed, we just don't do it.
The amount of dormant potential that's just left untapped because of that, it kills me from
Yeah, it's insane. So most people haven't had it explained to them in those terms that we can't control the outcome, but we can limit our downside. We can say, I'm only prepared to invest 50 grand in this, or I'm only prepared to, whatever it might be, or yeah, that seems fine to me, I'm just going to go ahead. I think everybody feels like they need a meticulously crafted strategy and plan and set of goals and everything to get started. And they don't. To get started, you just start. And then you build momentum. And then you refine. And then you get better. And then you set more structured goals. And then I feel like a lot of people approach being a novice at something like they're already an Olympian.
Yeah.
They want to have all the Rafa gear. They want to have a Pinarello Dogma bike. They want to have, they're like, oh, what supplements should I be taking? I'm like, dude, if you're overweight or you're not getting a good amount of sleep or your diet's shit, or you can't just go out and pedal, what's it for?
They're too busy thinking about that cherry to put on top of the cake they haven't even baked yet.
Yeah, you got to get your sponge in first.
Yeah.
So I can't cook, by the way, but so that was a low ball. But yeah, I feel like with so many things, I think you need to find an entry point where you can just start. And the aim should be to kind of see whether you love it, see whether you're concordant with it, see whether it's something you want to commit to. And then you can gradually ramp up on all of the stuff that we talk about with accelerating excellence. Because excellence shouldn't be the goal if you can't start, right? You know what I mean? So
Starting is part of excellence. Excellence is an example, and I think it is that process of zigzagging your way forward. And the zigs and zags become less and less. But unless you start, you just can't get to benefit or profit from any of the upside,
Yeah, 100%. I'm all for trying to achieve huge goals, like outrageous goals. I love it, and I'm very inspired by people who do it. But I think you need this bimodal approach. You need to be
Absolutely.
you need to be meticulous and disciplined and consistent and thorough in areas where there is the potential for predictability, right? And then you need to have an entirely different attitude and mindset in areas where there is massive uncertainty, right? And you kind of need the best of both worlds, I think, because the world is uncertain. There's no denying that. And if you haven't got a plan for that, or if you can't start because you can't see the finish line, or if you can't persevere through the fog, then you're never going to get there.
Sorry to interrupt the podcast, but before we dive deeper into the conversation, I want to express how grateful I am that you're voluntarily choosing to spend your time here with us. I also want to take a moment to ask for your support. I want to bring you the best podcast I can in terms of guests, engaging discussions, and thought-provoking conversations every week. And that's where you come in. By hitting that like button and subscribing to the podcast, you play a vital role. Simply put, when you hit that like button or subscribe, you enable the podcast to reach a much wider audience. And the wider the audience, the easier it is for guests within my network to convince their agents, management teams to free up their diary and come on the show. Thank you in advance for your likes and subscriptions. Now, let's get back to business. And Matt, I want to pivot ever so slightly. We talked a little bit about this peak experience. Has there been a time that jumps out for you in terms of, everything's going well and all of a sudden, whack, you get that kick in the pants? And I would often describe it as sort of a redhead moment, but a challenge or threat. Is there anything that jumps out at you in that respect? And what's your approach and mentality in those moments?
Dude, I've had, how long have you got? How long have you got? Well, I mean, look, even if we just talk about the last, I had a 24-month period, or no, a 12-month period where my marriage collapsed. One of my best friends came around to help me with a bike on Saturday night. We had a beer, and on Sunday morning, he shot himself in the head. My two closest friends and real support system in LA emigrated to New Zealand. When I left my marriage, I lost my home. I lost waking up in the same building as my son, who was only 3 at the time, and that was really hard. At the same time, I was halfway through really writing Mastering Uncertainty. So I was writing at the same time and running a business, and we still had a lot of these kind of COVID related restrictions. Yeah, I got rolled big time. Yeah, like in a kind of relatively short period of time, just endured tremendous losses. So yeah, I've had that. When I was 27, my mum went to work on Thursday and was buried the following Tuesday. So yeah, I've had that. I've had all sorts of things. I wasn't a good fit for a British boarding school, that's for sure, and that made me pretty miserable in my teenage years. So I've had a lot of high highs and pretty low lows.
I can imagine. Thanks for sharing that with us, Matt.
But I feel like everybody has, whether they want to talk about it or not is up to them. But I feel like everybody has moments that really test them, like where you're genuinely really, really tested, or you just can't see a way out of the situation that you're in. I don't know whether I've
What do you think it is that enables you to emerge from such, it doesn't get more challenging than those examples you gave us. But what do you think it is that enables people like yourself to emerge through those challenges stronger than you went in, and still to, the fact is you deliver the results as well?
Yeah, I feel like, I've got several answers to this. I haven't prepared for this question, so I'm prepared for any of them, but this kind of caught me a little off guard. I think part of it is that you'd be amazed what you can do when you don't have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, we all endure tremendous adversity, and yeah, sometimes it takes
a while to bounce back, or you need help, or you need therapy, or whatever. I'm no stranger to any of those things, but you don't have a choice, really. I mean, what are you going to do? Just like play dead? Where's that going to get you? Like, I think you'd be amazed. Everyone is amazed what they can do when they don't have a choice. And I feel like in all of those situations, I didn't have a choice. I think the other thing is that everything is temporary. Like even your darkest day is only 24 hours long. You know, I feel like if you can, one of the things that's really helped me actually as a decision technique is this idea of 10, 10, 10, right? Like how's it going to feel in 10 seconds? How's it going to feel in 10 months? And how's it going to feel in 10 years? And when I face a very, very difficult decision or I face a very difficult circumstance, I look to the longer time horizon. That's one thing I definitely do. I say, I have to, this is going to hurt, but in the long term, it's going to be much better for me. Or I just say, like, every time we've got rolled, we've got through it. Every time. You know, and I think about other people who have done the same. And I lean on other people. I'm not one of these especially kind of stoic, stiff upper lip Englishmen in this regard, mate. I've been infected by all the
Been in LA too long.
kale eating hippies here in
It's got to you at last. Yeah.
like but I ask for help. Like I just and I try and carve out time for the things that matter to me and are meaningful and enjoyable for me. And I think also another thing that's really helped me with those things is just accepting that it's there rather than fighting it. Like if you're having a shit time, there's nothing wrong with saying I'm having a shit time. I don't know who said it, but somebody said like behaving completely normally in completely abnormal situations is abnormal.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can just say I'm having a really shit time. I need some help. I need to stop the work because I'm not going to do it well, and I need to just go out for a run or go out on my bike, or I need to go and call a mate and whatever. I think it needs to be acknowledged, and then it can be dealt with and processed. But a lot of people just like charge ahead. So I think those are a few of the things that have helped me, and also just I have this life philosophy of try and turn poison into medicine, right? Like what can you take from the bad that can be transmuted into the good? So when my mum died, for example, I was like, fucking hell, am I going to be dead at 58? I hope not, but let's try and get some shit done, right? Like that's what really made me knuckle down and get the first book done, was thinking, how much time have we got? And one positive side effect from that whole period was I don't waste my time.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know so many people who waste fantastical amounts of their only non-renewable resource on utter bullshit, or allow other people to waste their time. There's none of that going on at this end, dude, because I learned the lesson, and I turned the negative outcome into something hopefully that's much more positive for me as a life philosophy. And there are always positives to find in adversity if you're prepared to look for them. You know, I really like that expression. You know, challenges are just opportunities in work clothes, right? Like I do think there are so many situations where you either learn something from it, or you can share your experience with other people, maybe to help them if they're going through something similar. Like there's a lot that you can do to turn these negatives into positive circumstances if you're of a mind to do so, you know.
One of the things I'd love to explore more is how you actually detach, switch off, relax. You've touched on your bike. I imagine that's part of it, but how do you do that? How do you sharpen the axe to renew that capacity to go again harder and harder and sustain performance the way you've talked about?
Yeah, that's. I'm really glad you've asked me that, James, because one of the things that I really loved in the book, which I hadn't fully, it actually came up in another book that I really like, Josh Waitzkin's The Art of Learning. I don't know if you've read that one.
Yes, I have. Yeah, great book.
is he was saying something very similar to you. You talk about the just switching between green head and blue head, and he talks about how one of the things that separates the world's best performers from less performers is that they're either on or they're off, and a lot of people are kind of hovering around in the middle. This is something that I've actually consciously been trying to work on myself, actually. So I'm glad you brought it up, is trying to be much more alternating between we're on and we're working, we're performing, we're doing the job, and we're off. And we're chilling, we're relaxing, we're taking it easy, we're recovering, and all of that. And I had fallen into that trap, I think, of never being at 100% and never being at 0%, and often getting a little bit lost in the middle and kind of drifting into the red. And I think a lot of people have a guilt about that. Like they feel like if they're not working all the time, then they should feel guilty about it. There's this kind of Protestant work ethic of just grinding yourself into the ground, and this kind of startup ethic of, oh, like everything's, the only fuel I need is Red Bull and pizza and an hour's nap. That's not me. That's not me. But I feel like what I've done is I've got comfortable with the idea of recovery. I've accepted it as something that's necessary rather than having, and it's so deeply entrenched in our culture, you know, in the workplace, that
there's some toxicity to it, isn't there, with desk time
really
culture and things like that.
Grinding it out, then you're half-assed.
And now this is where I genuinely challenge people listening now, because I really want to make a point here. Like, if you are not taking the same attention, focus, and effort to optimize your recovery as you are your training and competition, then you are not being professional and you are leaking progress. It is as important. The gym, competition, training, that is the stimulus to spark adaptation in terms of adapting your brain and body to a higher level. But the adaptations only take place during rest or recovery, whether that's sleep or from an emotional, you know, physically, if you're looking to say you're a bodybuilder or an athlete. But at the same time as well, those skills you've learned, even if you're in a cognitive role or a creative role, it's only through that detachment from the creative process, or you know, doing that deep conscious work to switching off, whether that's emotionally or mentally through, I don't know, a sport, or doing just something that uses your brain in a different way, that actually enables that creative insight or breakthrough.
100%, man. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think you need to overcome the cultural programming there and acknowledge it. That even if other people are doing their own thing, or even if other people like boast about how little sleep they get, or even if other people take the piss out of you for being in bed early, just you know, tend to fuck off. You know, you just got to do your own thing. Like, one of the big game changers for me, which is probably sounds a bit weird because I'm not. I mean, I work out a lot, and I run, and I'll go and do an hour on the rowing machine after this. Like, one of the big game changers for me, even though I'm not really an athlete, is the Whoop, because I realized how debilitating like certain lifestyle decisions are on my overall performance. And I have to fly a lot for work, like travel, stuff like that, how much it knocks out of your performance. And just seeing data really helped me to take it much more seriously. Like, oh, I actually need to rest. Like, I'm at 1%. I've got to rest. I've got to go and take it easy. I've got to get to bed early.
Alcohol was the killer, right?
Yeah, alcohol, man, a lot of booze on a long flight can put you straight into 1%.
Yeah.
You know? So I think I, like everyone else, very much a work in progress. I think the area where I've made the biggest gains in the last 12 months is definitely in that recovery. I take it much more seriously, and I'm a lot more level-headed. And when I need to switch it on, I can switch it on a lot more readily. And I just feel that we have maybe it's just me and how my brain works. Our idea of what productivity looks like and how much we can focus in a given day is mythic. I think it's bullshit. I would be amazed if anyone can truly focus with laser beam intensity for more than, let's call it 3 or 4 hours a day. I mean, if you've got an office job and you just meander from meeting to meeting, swilling coffee, pointing at slides, and occasionally chatting, you're not really, it's not the same thing. If you're writing and you're in the zone, or you're really genuinely trying to solve some complex Kafkaesque problem that's fighting back, I would defy anybody to think that they can work these massive hours and be fully productive. Yeah, fine. If you're standing at a photocopier, it's a different kind of thing. But I think we have a misconception about what is possible in terms of our ability to focus and get it done in a day. And we need a reset on that,
Agreed. And in terms of sort of winning your days, you've talked about how you're pretty structured. Do you have any weird habits or routines that are you're an absolute stickler for, that you haven't mentioned already, that you fancy sharing?
Weird habits. Oh gosh, where do I
They don't have
begin?
to be weird.
Well, I just find that I thrive when I know what I'm doing. And one of the things that was really interesting in writing Mastering Uncertainty was that when you see people who are, the more uncertainty people are exposed to, the more ritualized their behavior becomes, which I find is very interesting. Like, you see a lot of this in pre-game rituals in basketball. Like life on the ISS space station is like very, very heavily routinized. I think it's a psychological thing to try and offset one with a sense of control in the other, right? So I try and have as routine a day as possible. Yeah, I wake up pretty consistently around the same time and pretty early as well, probably around 5. I'm always in the gym every morning. If I can be, unless there's a kind of calls, I try and stack anything that matters has to get done in the morning. Like I do draw that distinction between like deep work and shallow work. If I've got to do deep work, I'm doing it first thing in the morning when I'm fresh and my brain is firing. And anything that's kind of administrative or tedious can be left to the afternoon. I'm normally in bed pretty early to try and get as much rest and sleep as I can, and I just try and stick to the routine, and I'm getting progressively better at just delegating or outsourcing things that don't matter.
Okay.
Right? Like, that's the other thing. If I don't need to do it, I try and find a way for somebody else to do it, rather than chewing up my headspace on that. And then the other thing is, I do try and balance what you're saying, like different parts of the brain. So all of my work pretty much is in my head. So I love getting in the garage and dismantling a carburetor, or working on a bike, or whatever it is that needs to be done, because I just find some people maybe like knitting or gardening or whatever, something earthy, something tactile, something tangible. I need those things too, and for me it just happens to be building bikes. But yeah, that I find it switches off one part of the brain, and it kind of allows the subconscious to process it. But when I was younger, I used to love like raking the leaves, doing the dishes, anything kind of mechanical and repetitive. It just gives the part of your brain that you're taxing an opportunity to have a break. And the next day or the day after or whatever, it like bubbles up the answers for you. Like, I got it now, because you were allowing it to rest. So
Rumination stage. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Matt, what's at this stage in your career, what is most important to you moving forward?
I think it's continuing to find and deploy my energy on things where there is where the pursuit of mastery is possible, because those are the things that I find I just enjoy the most. I don't have an idea for a 4th book at the moment, but I'm sure at some point the urge to write is going to kick in. And writing is one of those things where your appreciation for it always exceeds your capacity. right? Like you can always read another writer's writing and think, oh my God, that's amazing. You know, like that's the noun choice or the verb choice or the sentence structure or the texture or whatever it is. One of the things that I love about almost all the things that I do is that there's a correlation between knowledge and pleasure. And the more that you learn about something, the more you can appreciate it and enjoy it, whether it's your work or other people's work. Like designers don't look at the world the same way as other people. I don't think whenever I see something beautiful, I'm like, how did they make that? Or, oh, wow, someone really thought about that. Or, God, there's tremendous attention to detail in that. And I think you get a lot more pleasure from it. So I just want to spend as much of my time on activities where you can always get better and always challenge yourself in new ways, and where you can get into that flow state where we're happiest, right? And try and bin off as much of the rest as possible. I'm trying to grow the business at the moment, and that's going really well. It's a slightly different kind of challenge for me, but I'm loving it. But yeah, my mantra for this year has been like health, wealth, and quicker lap times. That's what I'm focusing
Have you
on.
got a specific lap time in mind? Is there a
Yeah, so the first track that I started riding at was Vegas Motor Speedway. That's the first track I ever rode. So I benchmark against that every year, and I'm hoping to. If I hit the time, I'll tell you what it was.
brilliant? Brilliant.
Yeah, I've got so I benchmark against my time on that track every year just because I know it best and it's where I started. But yeah, I'm trying to get. I don't need to be the fastest or the best at anything, particularly not in my personal life. But I like to think that I can be among the top pack
Nice.
at anything I put my mind to. So that's where I'm trying to get to, and it's a 5-year goal. So we'll see.
Exciting stuff. Can I finish up with asking you some quick fire questions?
Go for it.
Favorite movie?
Oh, pass. I might come back. I might have thought of it by the time we get to the last
I'll let it
one.
ruminate. Series?
Probably still Breaking Bad. That sunk its hooks into me like you wouldn't believe. It was like a compulsion. I felt like I was living in it
Did
by
you
the end
watch
of
it
it.
as it was released, or did you
I think
binge?
I binged it. I binged
Okay,
the whole thing later.
nice.
Yeah, it was wild.
Favorite book?
Favorite book. I don't know that I have a favorite because I've read so many, but there are a few that have stayed with me. Yours is definitely one of them. I've been reading The
A hell of a
War
lot
of
coming
Art
from you.
recently about overcoming resistance, which I
Oh wow.
really,
Yeah.
really liked. I think you get a kick out of that if you read it. What else? Yeah, oh, there's too many to name, really. Too many.
Have you got a favorite athlete of all time?
The athletes that I really admire most are the ones that have like this insane longevity, and often these periods where they get like totally kicked in the balls and still come back. I'm really inspired by athletes. Actually, I think when it comes to the bike, my favorite rider is probably Marc Marquez. He's just
Incredible, yeah.
he's an incredible athlete. I watched that Mark Cavendish
Yeah,
documentary, Cavs of like an incredible,
yeah, he's a beast,
phenomenal
isn't he?
competitor. Yeah, I quite like extreme sports, Red Bull sports, those kinds of things as well. So a lot of those people just blow my mind, like Kai Lenny, surfer, all of those kinds of people are just like they're superhuman to me. I mean, I know how you get there and everything, but
Hmm.
it's insane. I watched the show about Conor McGregor. It's so he's a fascinating character to me because he's obviously a kind of showman and all of that, but God, he must work so hard, that guy. I mean, I'm sure that I listened to the UFC interview that you did, and I just realized these people just they must work so hard, like life on a monorail, to get into a ring and fight someone like that. I'm astonished by it. I'm inspired and impressed by anybody who can do something that I can't, and that's everyone in life. So I
Yeah.
always look to people who can do something that I can't. There's a guy in my gym actually, and he's not as in as good a shape as me cardiovascularly, but he lifts pretty much the same as I do. And he's fucking 73.
Oh, excellent. What a beast.
Yeah, and I just think like, wow, this guy is that is probably the most inspiring thing I've seen in a long time. 73 years old. And he's in the gym with like these 30s and 40-year-olds in the class, like a circuit class, and he's going really hard, and he's
Yeah.
and he's
Oh,
and
it's
he's
fantastic to
on
see,
the
isn't it?
top, and
Yeah.
he like never missed a beat at that age. Like I just think, wow, let's be the oldest guy in the gym and not the youngest guy in the
When
nursing
you got to
home.
smash him next time, Matt. Let's get.
Oh, I take him to pieces in a competition, but he's 73. He's
That's
got
brilliant.
33 years on me. I just think we have so many limits that are imposed by I guess our culture or our
Yeah.
expectations don't need to be there, and once you see somebody who embodies it, you don't really have an excuse anymore.
Well,
That's
that's it, right? There's so many bullshit caps that just leave dormant potential in so many areas and so many people. And
yeah, don't talk yourself out
mm,
of it, I think is a big point. Like like life is full of people who will say no to you. Don't be one yourself. Like
yeah,
don't be saying no to yourself before you've even tried.
100%,
Just
100%. If you could have coffee with any historical figure, who would you choose?
ooh, any historical figure. Probably Marcus Aurelius.
Nice choice.
I'm pulling. That's a bit of a knee jerk, but probably.
Yeah,
I was trying to think of like a deep historical figure. I mean, I could go with any of the great composers, any of the great philosophers, but I think he'd be an interesting cat.
yeah, for sure. Do you have a personal mantra?
No, I don't think I do. I don't think I
Your
don't think.
favorite quote?
Um, there are so many amazing like motivational quotes. Now you put me on the spot. I'm trying to think of one of my favorite ones. Um, there's a brilliant one from the guy I think who started the Four Seasons. This isn't my favorite, but it's just come to mind. Like, excellence is often just your ability to suffer.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
I think that
suffer.
there's a lot of uh, it's purposefully, I think, melodramatic to put it in those terms, but I often think that it's a matter of just keeping going. And obviously you've got to be smart and you've got to have good technique and all the things that we've talked about today, but so many people just stop when they should continue.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I actually also, one that I've been using a lot is one of yours. Like, excellence is doing the ordinary things extraordinarily well. I always try and bear that in mind in my work and everything as well. I think that's a really solid piece of advice, because so many people think that the difference is there must be some magic or some silver bullet or some natural talent, and of course there is talent, but the people who are the best must be doing something completely different. But I don't think that they are. I think that they are doing the same things. They're just doing them much better. And I find that like really humanizes elite performance, and it makes it feel like it's something that might be more attainable when you realize you just need to put
Yeah, I
the
think that's
hours.
such an important point you made there, because that's the thing, right? It's so much more accessible than many believe for them. There's so much more possible for them they generally perceive, and that's a shame.
Yeah, I just feel like if people, like you said, if they learn about all this stuff at school, the mindset stuff,
Yeah, we're on it. We'll get there.
then it would be incredible, because we can always do. There's so much that we could do, but we don't, because we either just don't try, or we don't start, or we're defeated by our culture rather than our own ability. When I started to learn the Tchaikovsky piano concerto, like when I was 16, it sounds really naive and a little bit dumb, but I still cling to this. Like, my teacher said, you can't do it. There's no way you can do it. You don't have the right background. And I said, but I've got 10 fingers, haven't I? And they just like didn't really know what to say to that. But it's fucking true. Like, if you've got 10 fingers, there's no biomechanical reason why you can't play the piano.
Of course.
Like, just, I mean, fine, you may not get there, but don't be defeated by other people's
Shit attitudes. Yeah.
attitude and their limits, and don't allow other people to project their bullshit and insecurities onto you. You do you, and you'll see the progress, you know.
And that lends on to this last question, and perhaps may form part of the answer. If you could drill one message into people listening to this who deep down know they've got more to offer, but are perhaps struggling to do that just start bit, what would your advice to them be?
Well, it's not something that we've talked about, but I wholeheartedly believe that, and this came from I didn't come up with this line. I think it came from David Senra on the Founders podcast, or someone he interviewed. If you're not mourning or grieving for the other things that you would like to do, then you're just not focused enough. I feel like to achieve a very high standard of things in one thing, the starting point for doing it is saying no to a lot of other things that you could be doing that are competing for your time, that are competing for your energy, that are competing for your headspace, that are competing for your money, that are competing for your attention. Everything is competing for those things. And in order to be extremely focused, you need to be saying no to a lot of things. And I think it's the saying no to other things that often derails people. It's like, yeah, I know I've got an 18-mile run to do tomorrow, but I really want to go out and get wankered with my mates tonight. Or I know I really want to get quicker at the bike, but I also don't want to spend the money on the coach. Or, you know, whatever it is, there's always a trade-off, and you make trade-offs much more easily if you just say no to things that aren't on the path, right? And I feel like it's a good signal for me that I'm really focused when I'm saying no to things that I really do actually want to do, like, and I feel like a sense of loss for the things that I'm not doing. Like, I don't know whether that's been true for you. I'd actually love to hear what you have. But
Yeah, absolutely. That resonates entirely. And I actually think that there's almost, as you were talking there, in my head, almost visualized almost this potential energy. And that's the sort of currency that you talk about. All those things, we're almost talking about this currency which you can spend on, you know, getting better at whatever it is you aim to get better at. And by saying no to some things you really want, you're able to reinvest that, and obviously there's that compounding effect and eventual tipping points that will come through doing so. And, you know, it made me think as well about, you know, you've turned down some big checks to stay concordant and stay on your path because they don't resonate. And, you know, I've been in similar situations too. And it really struck a chord with me as you were talking there. I couldn't agree more.
yeah, I guess the learning was that it does actually, you have to, you know, that you're on the right path. I think when you sense when you do feel those other things, there's a little bit of a loss. I mean, I'm not talking about living like a monk or shunning your family or your responsibilities or anything like that. Far from it. Like, I'm as hands-on a parent as you can as you can be. But when there are things that you would love to do, but you just acknowledge, I can't do this because I have to do.
One of the terms I've heard you use before, which I love, which I think links to this, is this constructive abandonment. And for me, I think of it as, from my experience within sort of trading investing, as cutting your losers as aggressively as possible, even though you kind of, there's an element of love, or like, I really like that, but you just know fundamentally that it doesn't make the boat go faster. And it's one of the hardest things to do, or habits to form. But when you can aggressively cut those losers or constructively abandon things, it just frees so much capacity.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I know we've got to wrap things up and I could just talk forever about this, but I feel like having a term for things makes them legitimate.
Oh, of course.
And I feel like there wasn't a term for stopping doing something for the greater good. There was only like giving up or
kind
of thing.
And I love that term.
I fully believe that constructive abandonment is a really powerful idea, and I use it all the time myself. I'm like, I'm not giving up. I've recognized that this isn't the route, this isn't the path, this isn't going to get me to where I want to be, and it's actually the right decision. It's a constructive decision to abandon this, and I think that can really help you focus if you look at a lot through that lens. Hopefully that will help some people.
I'm sure it will. I love that term. I'm glad we got to cover that. Look, Matt, I'm so grateful for your time. I always enjoy speaking with you, and hopefully we'll be grabbing another conversation soon. But I've really enjoyed this. I think there's so much value in there for everyone listening.
You're so welcome, man. It's been my pleasure.
Speak to you soon, bud. Thank you for choosing to spend your time with us today. I love this topic of human performance and excellence, and I've been engaged in it neurotically for the last 20 years. It's a sincere privilege to have the opportunity to share my knowledge, network, and learnings with you. Now, go and put the principles to work. Make sure you let us know what resonates. Reach out with questions, blind spots. We've got you covered. Remember, excellence is just a series of days repeated over and over again. Now go and win your day. In 2021, I published my first book, Accelerating Excellence. If you're finding the conversations and information on this podcast useful, you might want a physical reference point, and to gain even deeper awareness of the concepts discussed. The book's actually more of an operation manual containing more detail with a step-by-step guide on how to implement all this stuff so you can get maximum benefit, which was one of my main motivations in writing it. Yes, I want the podcast and the book to be inspiring and entertaining, but it was non-negotiable for me to make sure that the listener or reader is provided with a structure and direction in terms of actually putting this stuff to work. The book's called Accelerating Excellence. It's a #1 international bestseller. And if you're moving from more than just interest towards implementation, I think you'll really enjoy it. Like everything I do, the book is evidence-based, but practice-led, drawing on my experience working with some of the world's most elite, exclusive, high-performing teams and individuals. It's filled with highly actionable strategies you can apply today to become better tomorrow. If this sounds like something from you, see the link in description where you can download 6 chapters of the book for free in either audio or digital format. It's also available to purchase on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and at your local bookstore. I hope you enjoy. By now, we all know the importance of a winning mindset. We're bombarded with elite performers telling us that mindset's what separates the best from the rest. That if we want to be successful, we need to be more confident, resilient, and motivated. And of course, when panic strikes, we need to calm down, relax, or chill out. Great, we get it. But the question is how? We're given this guidance with almost zero practical advice in terms of how to achieve it. Where can we actually go to develop that world-class mindset? What's the back squat for resilience, the bench press for confidence, and the bicep curl for positive thinking? Well, that's why I created the Mindset app. Through the app, you'll gain access to the psychological skills training used by world champion athletes, special forces operators, and some of the world's most successful traders and investors. The reality is these guys pay me a fortune to help them get this right. But the thing is, these skills are equally, if not more important, for the aspiring athlete, executive, or operator. And that's exactly why I created this app. I want these tools and training available to anyone, anywhere, anytime. Mindset is a skill, and like any skill, it can be developed with the right strategy and effort. The tools and techniques are designed in a way that will literally rewire your brain. Like learning to ride a bike or drive a car, all the techniques are designed with creating a high-performing, self-regulating you 2.0. Every strategy in the Mindset app is backed by empirical research. There's 10-minute emotional control training exercises that have been shown to increase your ability to overcome detrimental decision-making biases by up to 80%. In another study, just 3 weeks of executing visualization training led to 34% improvements in performance. Another research group found 50% greater improvements in the rate of learning. And just a few weeks of performing visualization led to 22% reductions in anxiety and 21% increases in confidence. These numbers are phenomenal, and I've never met an elite performer in any domain that can afford to be missing out on this type of edge. What I love most is that we've structured everything so that you don't need to carve out an extra hour in your day to get this done. Small bite-sized chunks of 5 to 10 minutes are all it takes. In fact, I'd only encourage you to use the tool on your commute, in the sauna, at the end of your working day, or bolt it onto the end of your gym session. Any dead time you have can now immediately be transformed to deliver you extreme performance gains. My goal is to remove every possible obstacle to your development. And with that in mind, the basic package is completely free. Visit the link in description and sign up for our pre-launch free emotional control, visualization, and performance routine programs. I really hope you enjoy.